On November 13th, 2022, in the quiet college town of Moscow, Idaho, a nightmare unfolded at 1122 King Road. 4 University of Idaho students were dead, murdered in their own home by an unknown killer. Upstairs on the 3rd floor, childhood best friends Madison Mogen and Kaylee Gonsalves shared a bed. Downstairs on the 2nd floor were boyfriend and girlfriend Ethan Chapin and Xana Knodel. All 4 had been brutally stabbed to death. But 2 other roommates that were in the house that night, Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk, were unharmed. For reasons that remain unclear, the killer did not kill them. The killer crept into the house and went upstairs. In Maddie's room, he found Maddie and Kaylee sharing a bed. He attacked and killed them both with a knife. Xana heard a commotion. She screamed when she saw the masked man, and he chased her into her bedroom where he killed her. Then he turned his attention to her sleeping boyfriend, Ethan. He left the house the same way he entered, through the sliding glass door in the kitchen, but on his way out, he walked past Dylan, who was peeking through her bedroom door. After he left, Dylan frantically texted her roommates, but only Bethany answered. As Dylan ran down to the 1st floor to Bethany's room, she glanced towards Xana's bedroom and saw her lying on the floor on her back in her underwear. Dylan and Bethany were both scared and confused, tired and disoriented from a night of drinking. They weren't sure if Xana was just passed out, or if something more sinister had happened. In the morning, they called over their friends. Ethan's best friend Hunter Johnson and his girlfriend Emily arrived first. Dylan and Bethany were scared stiff, still unsure what was wrong with Xana, and confused why Kaylee and Maddie still hadn't answered their phones. Hunter bravely went into the house, calling out Xana's name. He found Xana and Ethan, checked for signs of life, but it was clear to him both were gone. The 4 victims were close friends, all students at the University of Idaho in Moscow. They lived together in a quiet, seemingly safe neighborhood, where violent crime was quite rare. The last murder in the area had occurred 7 years earlier in 2015. However, there had been several student deaths in the months leading up to these murders. Maddie Mogen and Kaylee Gonsalves were childhood best friends from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. They were so close they were more like sisters. Both were outgoing, academically driven, and well-loved by their peers. Friends described them as inseparable, often studying and socializing together with a tight-knit bond that lasted for years. Maddie was 21 years old and a senior majoring in marketing. She was part of the Pi Beta Phi sorority and worked part-time at a restaurant in Moscow called Mad Greek. She was an only child, but was close with her parents and Kaylee's family. She also had a boyfriend called Jake who lived in Boise and went to BSU. Kaylee was also 21 and was majoring in general studies. She was part of the Alpha Phi sorority. She had a dog named Murphy who she shared with her ex-boyfriend Jack DeCur. She was set to graduate the next month, having finished her studies early, and had already moved out of the shared house on King Road, although a lot of her stuff was still in her room. Her future was bright, and she had secured a job in Austin, Texas, and was going to move there after graduation. She had secured an apartment and was going to live there with another University of Idaho student. During her time at college, Kaylee paid for all of her own expenses, being completely independent. But she returned to the King Road house the weekend of the murders to show Maddie her new Range Rover, which she had saved up for herself and was proud of it. It was a used vehicle costing just over $24,000, and she made a $7,500 down payment on it. Sadly, she was unaware it would be the last time that she and Maddie would ever get to ride in the Range Rover. Xana Knodel was 20 years old, originally from Avondale, Arizona, and later from Post Falls, Idaho. She was a junior majoring in marketing, and along with Maddie, she was part of the Pi Beta Phi sorority and worked at the Mad Greek restaurant. Xana's home life was unfortunate. Her mother struggled with drug use and was in and out of jail, leaving Xana and her sister to live with their aunt and uncle. Xana had last spoke to her mother about a month before the murders. They tried to arrange a lunch, but Xana ended up being too busy to meet. At this time, her mother was still involved in drugs and was arrested again just a few days after the murders. Xana's boyfriend, Ethan, was 20 years old. He was a sophomore majoring in recreation, sport, and tourism management. He was part of the Sigma Chi fraternity. He grew up in Mount Vernon, Washington, and was a triplet. He and his siblings, Hunter and Maisie, all attended the University of Idaho in Moscow. His family described Ethan as the glue that held the family together. He He was the leader, the confident, caring, loving boy who always looked out for others. And his parents had visited him just the weekend before for Parents' Weekend. Dylan, Bethany, and Kaylee had moved into the house in August 2022. So Kaylee hadn't planned to live there long, considering she was about to graduate in December. Maddie had lived in the house since at least the year before. And although Ethan didn't live in the house, he was there pretty much all the time seeing Xana. And it was a party house. There were people in and out all the time. At 8:57 p.m. on November 12th, 2022, Kaylee Gonzalez posted on Instagram for the last time. The image she posted is heartbreaking because it shows all 4 victims and the 2 remaining housemates together, smiling, happy, unaware of what was to happen later that very night. She captioned it, "One lucky girl to be surrounded by these people every day." That night, Ethan, Xana, and Bethany attended a party at the Sigma Chi house, just a short walk from 1122 King Road. Meanwhile, Maddie and Kaylee went to a local sports bar called the Corner Club. They were both 21, so they could get into bars in the town. At around 1:30 a.m., Kaylee and Maddie are seen ordering food at the grub truck.
The carbonara.
Okay.
But if I have like a free grub truck on my app.
Oh, yep. So what you want to do is we'll actually do this.
There are several people there, including someone the internet nicknamed Hoodie Guy. His name is Jack Showalter. He was another University of Idaho student, and he had also been at the Corner Club that night. He's seen on camera walking with Kaylee and Maddie to the grub truck. He's seen on camera standing around waiting for them to get their food, and at one point he's seen talking to other people who are there. Kaylee orders carbonara, and then they wait, along with several other people, in the cold. It's clear that Maddie is drunk. She can't stand still, she can't walk straight, and she's practically begging the grub truck guys for their food. This matches what Dylan said when she told police that Maddie was the most drunk she'd ever seen her.
I'm adding to... Wait, say that again?
Never used my phone till I had like a store.
Oh, really?
Always had my cards.
Okay. Really solid. Of course. We're doing death by garlic with chicken, 5 cheese with chicken. Anything else? Love it. $23. Do you guys have any NFC go then? Any whatever?
Once Kaylee got the food, she and Maddie ran off without Jack. He seemed perplexed, but walked away himself, and he went home.
Yes, you absolutely can.
Without the onion salsa.
No salsa.
And do you guys have sour cream or no?
We do not.
Okay, that's okay.
Maddie and Kaylee contacted Eric, a local Uber driver. They didn't contact him through the app, but they had his number, so they contacted him directly. And they did this often. He said that Kaylee and Maddie were really excited about the food that they had just got, and Kaylee appeared pretty drunk. He said that they didn't pay him, but he didn't give rides for free, and it was expected that they would pay him later. After dropping the girls off at home, he went to Taco Bell and later gave his receipt and data to the police. We'll talk more about him later. Xana and Ethan arrived home at about 1:45 a.m. Kaylee and Maddie arrived home at 1:56 a.m. Meanwhile, Dylan, Bethany, and an unknown female friend were in the living room watching Vampire Diaries. So by 2 a.m, all housemates were home. The food Kaylee and Maddie had brought home had an impact on the others because they talked about ordering from the grub truck themselves. And at 2:10 a.m, Dylan texted Eric, the same Uber driver, and asked if he was still driving. He said he was, but she didn't reply back to that message. Ultimately, Dylan decided to go to bed instead of going out for food. At 2:15 a.m, Kaylee sent a text to her ex, Jack DeCoeur, saying that she had his vape and he could come to the house to pick it up. There were several unanswered calls to Jack that night. Between 2:26 to 2:52 a.m, both Maddie and Kaylee made a total of 9 phone calls to him, all of which went unanswered. Between 2 and 3 a.m, the unknown friend who was hanging out with Dylan and Bethany went home. Also during this hour, Dylan went to bed, and Bethany, Maddie, and Kaylee hung out in Kaylee's room together for a bit. At some point, Bethany and Maddie let Murphy outside, but Bethany told police she doesn't stay outside long because it's cold. So she left Maddie out there with Murphy, and then she went to bed and watched something on her iPad. At 2:53 a.m., Maddie called Bethany, but she doesn't answer. So Maddie goes to Bethany's room and asks if she has Murphy because she can't find him, but Bethany didn't have him. It's presumed that Murphy was found, and then Kaylee and Maddie went to bed in Maddie's room. At 3:50 a.m., Dylan creates a new contact in her phone, showing that even though she went to bed, she was awake. At 4 a.m., Xana received a DoorDash delivery from Jack in the Box, which she likely ordered through Ethan's account, since no record of it was found on Xana's account. The DoorDash driver confirmed they delivered to the front door at 3:59 a.m. At 4:12, Xana is on TikTok and left a comment on one of her friend's posts. Dylan heard noises, enough to get up and peek out of her door. She thought she heard Kaylee playing with Murphy and then run down the stairs and say, "Someone's here." She opened her door but didn't see anything. The second time she opened her door, she thought she heard crying coming from Xana's room or the bathroom, and then heard a man say, "It's okay, I'm here to help you."
What do you remember seeing? What started?
I remember I was in my room and I was trying to go to bed and I heard Kaylee, who ex-girlfriend, who also has a dog Murphy.
Real fast. Which one is your room?
Kaylee.
Which one is your room?
Oh,
What room are you in? Okay.
All I heard was I heard her go upstairs. Like, okay, I'm gonna go to sleep now because she's going upstairs.
And you heard who go upstairs?
Kaylee and the dog Murphy.
And upstairs to the very top?
Yeah, that's where her room is.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden I heard her walking up. I heard her scream and she ran upstairs because she saw someone. That's what I'm pretty sure she said. Someone's here, and she screamed and just ran downstairs. And I called for her name, but I jumped up and locked my door because I was so scared. And then I heard someone in the bathroom, and I heard her crying, and I heard some guy say that you're going to be okay, I'm going to help you. And I kept calling her name, but she wasn't answering.
At 4:17, a neighbour's surveillance camera picks up several noises, a whimpering, followed by a thud, followed by barking. This barking continued for around 30 minutes. The camera was less than 50 feet away from Xana's bedroom wall. The third time Dylan opened her door, she saw a masked man with bushy eyebrows make eye contact with her and walk past her towards the kitchen and sliding back door. She said he was about 3 feet from her door when she saw him, and he was carrying something resembling a vacuum piece, something cylindrical.
And then I opened the door for a second, and I saw this guy, and he was not insanely tall, but he was wearing all black and like this mask, which is covering his forehead and his mouth. And I locked the door and I called, and I didn't know what to do.
This is at 4
a.m.
Cylindrical. Bethany said she woke up to the sound of what she described as a firecracker and a bright light, then heard what she thought was the beer pong table moving and cups falling. At 4:19 a.m, she called Dylan, and Dylan told her she just saw a man in all black walk past her door. Dylan then tried to get hold of her roommates, but at 4:22, she texted Bethany and said that no one was answering. She said she was freaking out. They continued to text, but later to police, Bethany said she thought Dylan was just imagining what she saw, since they were both still drunk and tired and groggy. Dylan told Bethany that she was scared, so she told Dylan to run down to her room. When Dylan ran towards the stairs, she saw Xana lying on the floor of her bedroom. Her head was towards the wall and her feet towards the door. At 4:32, while in Bethany's room, Dylan texted Kaylee again saying, "Please answer." That night, there is a flurry of phone activity from Dylan and Bethany, desperate to get a hold of their roommates and friends. They didn't sleep for long, only about 3 hours. We know this because of the lack of phone activity. In the morning, Dylan and Bethany woke up together in Bethany's bed and said they were both too scared to leave the room. The phone activity continued non-stop. Between 8:05 and 10 a.m, Dylan was active on Instagram and Snapchat, messaging people, trying to find out where her roommates were, and messaging her roommates through those apps. She told police that it was common for her and her friends to communicate through social media. At 10:04, for less than a minute, Dylan was active on Indeed, a job hunting website, before going back on Snapchat, sending and receiving messages. At 10:23, Dylan texts Maddie asking if she's awake. Then she goes back on Instagram and Snapchat. At 11:29, she texts Kaylee. At 11:39, she texts her dad. At 11:50, Dylan receives 2 texts from Jenna McClure, who was the marketing and PR manager for the Pi Beta Phi sorority, which Dylan, Bethany, Xana, and Maddie were part of. Then Dylan calls Emily, who lived next door. Emily said that she would send Hunter Johnson, Ethan's friend and her boyfriend, over to check things out. Meanwhile, Bethany also accessed Instagram and Snapchat that morning. Then between 7:30 and 9:04, she calls her mum and dad and speaks with them several times. Between 8:41 and 8:42, she takes pictures with her phone. At 11:21, Jenna texts Bethany, and then she calls her at 11:49. She then texts her 3 more times at 11:54. According to Dylan, when Hunter Johnson arrived, he asked for a knife to protect himself while he went to investigate the house. Dylan told him where he could find a knife, so he took a large kitchen knife with him when he went to look in Xana's room. Dylan followed him upstairs and noticed that Xana was still lying on the floor. Hunter told her to go back downstairs. When Hunter eventually came back down, he told them to call 911.
911 location of your emergency.
Something is happening. Something happened in our house. We don't know what.
What is the address of the emergency?
1122.
What is the rest of the address?
Oh, Kings Road.
Okay. And is that a house or an apartment?
It's a house.
Can you repeat the address to make sure that I have it right?
I'll talk to you guys. We live at the White, so we're next to them.
I need someone to repeat the address for verification.
The address, 1122 King Road.
And what's the phone number that you're calling from?
What's your phone number?
And tell me exactly what's going on.
One of the roommates has passed out, and she was drunk last night, and she's not waking up.
Okay.
Oh, and they saw some man in their house last night. Yeah.
And are you with the patient? Okay, I need someone to keep the phone, stop passing it around.
Can I just tell you what happened pretty much?
What is going on currently? Is someone passed out right now?
I don't really know, but pretty much at 4 a.m.
Okay, I need to know what's going on right now if someone is passed out. Can you find that out?
Yeah, I'll come. Come on, Bethany, we gotta go check. But we have to. Is she passed out? She's not waking up.
Okay, one moment. I'm getting help started that way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and how old is she?
She's 20.
20, you said?
Yes, 20 here. 20.
Okay.
Hello? Hello?
Okay, I need someone to stop passing the phone around because I've talked to 4 different people.
Hey, sorry, they just gave me the phone.
Is she breathing?
Hello?
Is she breathing?
No.
Okay.
She talked to them, okay? I can't talk to them. I need you to talk to them.
Hello.
Okay. I've already sent the ambulance and law enforcement. Stay on the line. If there is a defibrillator available, send someone to get it now and tell me when you have it.
Say that again. There's a police here right now.
Okay. If there is a defibrillator available, send someone to get it now and tell me when you have it.
We don't have one. I think yes. Do you have a defibrillator? Yes, you have one.
Are you talking to the officer?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to let you go since he's there with you and can help you.
Okay.
It's clear from the 911 call that Dylan is in shock. At one point, she asks her friends, "Where's Kaylee?" At this point, no one had any idea that Maddie and Kaylee had also been killed upstairs. In fact, they still weren't sure if Xana and Ethan were okay. Only Hunter got close enough to see that they were dead, but he kept it quiet to spare his friends and the trauma of seeing them lifeless, and told everyone to get out of the house. When the police arrive expecting someone who's passed out, they quickly learn that that was not the case. They began securing the premises with crime scene tape, and Dylan told police that it was only then, and when the ambulance came and left, that she realised Xana was dead. Then the vandal alert was sent to everyone in the area, and that's when she knew a murder had occurred.
So they can text the entire You could have told us what happened before they sent a text.
I have no idea what you're talking about right now.
They sent a text to the entire university before even telling us what happened. Like, obviously we know, but it'd be nice to have a confirmation.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys.
When Officer Corbin Smith entered the house, he noted that Xana was wearing a sweatshirt and underwear and was lying on the floor of her bedroom. He said she was covered in blood and could see lacerations indicative of defensive wounds on her hands. He noted Ethan on the bed with wounds to his neck. He was also covered in blood, and the bedding around him was soaked in blood. When he went upstairs, he saw that Kaylee was unrecognizable. Her face was completely disfigured and was stabbed several times, he said. He saw that Maddie had multiple stab wounds, and the comforter was soaked in blood. Smith was assigned to hold security at the sliding glass door, and he noticed footprints in the snow. He described them as very large, and when measured they were 13 to 14 inches long. He noted the footprints led to and from the slider door, and then a trail of them led right down towards the front of the house. He also noticed smudged fingerprints on the door and windows, and a discarded black backpack in the yard, but it was empty. From the autopsies, we know some of the horrific details of the crime. It was truly barbaric. It seems that Maddie and Ethan were asleep when they were attacked because of the lack of defensive wounds. Ethan only had sharp force injuries. His fatal stab wound was behind his left clavicle, which severed a vein and an artery. His jugular vein was also severed. Xana only had sharp force injuries and had been stabbed over 50 times. Her fatal wounds were from a laceration to her heart and to her right lung. Her wounds were mostly defensive, meaning she was putting up a fight and trying to protect herself. Maddie only had sharp force injuries, and her fatal wounds came from a laceration to her left lung and her liver. Kaylee suffered horrible injuries. She had sharp force injuries, blunt force injuries, and asphyxial injuries. She was stabbed over 20 times, and her fatal wounds were a liver laceration, left lung laceration, 2 subdural bleeds, and a stab behind her clavicle, which severed an artery and a vein. We don't know what object was used to cause Kaylee's blunt force injuries. Could it have been the butt of the knife? Possibly, but would that cause the killer to injure himself in the process? Dylan noted that the masked man she saw was carrying some sort of cylindrical object that looked like, to her, a vacuum. Whatever it was, could that have been used in the murders, or did the killer beat her with a gun? We just don't know. And we don't know why Kaylee suffered these types of injuries and the other 3 victims did not. Police started gathering evidence from the house and interviewing everybody who had a connection with the victims. This included the surviving roommates, friends, family, neighbors, drivers, and other students and locals. The DoorDash driver, whose name is Molly, said that she had worked 12 to 18 hours on the night of November 12th to 13th and received 3 orders in the King Road area that night. The delivery at 1122 King Road was her final delivery that night, but she was having trouble finding it because the porch light was blocking the numbers. She said her Google Maps told her to park behind the house. Initially, she parked in front of the house and saw a female with long brown hair in the top bathroom window. This would be the bathroom on the 3rd floor used by Kaylee and Maddie. She said the female ducked down when she looked at her, but she couldn't identify the woman as any of the victims. She moved the car and parked it around the back of the house, and she said that she could see that all the lights were on in the house. Google Maps instructed her to enter the house from the back sliding door, but Molly said she felt uncomfortable doing that because there wasn't a direct path. She started to walk down Queen Road with her flashlight. And at that point, a man with blonde or red spiky hair in a collared shirt drove by in a tan sedan. She said she walked back up to her car and then drove back down to the front of the house, where she finally saw and confirmed the house number. She put the food on the doorstep, took a picture, and left at 4 a.m. Police were able to determine that the tan sedan was actually a light-coloured SUV. During the time that Molly was in the area and looking for the house, a white Hyundai Elantra was seen on camera driving around the area as well. At 3:56 a.m., the Elantra entered the King Road, Queen Road loop. At the same time that Molly was at the front of the house, the Elantra exited King Road, and this was at 3:58 a.m. But Molly said she didn't see any Elantra at any point. If only dogs could talk. Murphy certainly heard and saw a lot during the murders. Between 4:17 and 5 a.m, he was barking, and this was recorded on the neighbours' security cameras. Dylan said she didn't remember if Murphy was barking the first time she opened her bedroom door, but she said it was possible he was barking but moving away from the house. And later she tells police that she thinks that Murphy was outside. From the recording, it does sound like Murphy is outside because his barking is so loud and clear. A neighbour also told police that he heard Murphy barking outside from 4:17 to 5 a.m. They said they'd never heard him bark outside in the middle of the night before. One theory is that the barking started when the killer attacked Kaylee and Maddie, and when he'd finished with them, he shut Murphy out on the balcony. That's why the barking at first sounds muffled and then sounds loud and clear. But there was no blood found on Murphy or on the balcony or balcony door, so maybe the killer put Murphy on the balcony before he started the killings. After all, Dylan said she heard what she thought was Kaylee playing with Murphy at 4 a.m, but the loud barking heard on camera didn't start until 4:17 a.m. So what exactly was happening with Murphy between 4 and 4:17? But if the killer did put Murphy on the balcony, regardless of what time it was, someone had to have let Murphy back in the house at 5 a.m. when the barking finally stopped. But who? So this theory doesn't make much sense. Perhaps instead Murphy chased the killer outside through the sliding glass door and continued to bark outside. Then at some point Murphy must have come back into the house and gone to Kaylee's room where he remained. Weirdly though, Murphy did not have any blood on him despite there being plenty of blood around the victims and the bedroom doors were left open, which means he didn't go to Kaylee. And it's strange that Murphy wouldn't start barking loudly until the killer was finished. And the biggest question is, why didn't Bethany or Dylan say they heard Murphy barking for 45 minutes straight and go and check on him? If the neighbour could hear him, they definitely could. When police entered the house, they found scared little Murphy on Kaylee's bed, and they closed the bedroom door to keep him from jumping on any of the victims and contaminating anything. Later, when officers started taking photos, Murphy moved to underneath Kaylee's desk. It seems that Murphy was fully aware that something had happened to Kaylee, and maybe he even saw her killed. Murphy was released to Jack DeCoeur the next day, and thankfully, he is doing well. The next person who heard and saw things that night was Dylan Mortensen. Her bedroom was on the second floor, the same as Xana's, and she was closest to the kitchen and right next to the stairs that went up to Kaylee and Maddie's rooms. When interviewed by police, Dylan described the last episode of Vampire Diaries she watched that night. She said the episode involved two men, one wearing all black rescuing a woman. There are a few episodes that fit that description. One of them is Season 8, Episode 12, in which two men rescue a woman, and one of them says to her, "It's okay, I'm here to help you."
You're gonna be okay. No, it's okay, I'm here to help.
Get away from
It's okay,
me.
I'm here to help you. Caroline, she's here!
When Dylan told police she heard a male voice in the house say those exact words, was she misremembering? Was the Vampire Diaries stuck in her head, and what she heard in the house and what she had heard on TV became scrambled in her memory? Dylan told Officer Payne that she was awoken at 4 a.m. by the sound of Kaylee playing with Murphy. But we know from her phone activity that she created a new contact at 3:50, so either she was already awake at 4 a.m. or she was woken by 3:50, which means the attacks would have happened earlier. In the body cam footage, which is the earliest telling of her recollection of events, she said that she called out to Kaylee.
All I heard was I heard her go upstairs. Like, okay, I'm gonna go to sleep now because she's going upstairs.
You heard who go upstairs?
Kaylee and the dog Murphy.
And upstairs to the very top?
Yeah, that's where her room is.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden I heard her walking up, I heard her scream, and she ran upstairs because she saw someone. That's what I'm pretty sure she said. Someone's here, and she screamed and just ran downstairs. And I called for her name, but I jumped up and locked my door because I was so scared.
The killer surely would have heard her, since Dylan also said that you can hear everything in that house. Since there's a lot of information from different statements, let's sum up what Dylan said she saw and heard. She heard someone playing with Murphy, heard Kaylee run downstairs in heavy boots, heard Kaylee say, "Someone's here," then heard crying, then heard a man say, "I'm here to help you," then saw a masked man leave the house, then saw Xana lying on the floor of her room.
Hi, my name is Xana Kernodle. I'm a marketing major here at the University of Idaho. And I'm involved in a couple things down here, including Vandal Solutions. Last year I did Police Properties. I was an associate with them. And I basically just worked with Police Properties and did advertising for them, did sales events, etc. And this year I'm doing sales, so I'm a sales associate. So basically I just call people around Moscow, ask them if they're interested in our business, etc. But yeah, I'm a junior here, so it's really exciting. I love it at the University of Idaho, and I'm super excited to be in this marketing class because it's basically my major. And this is actually King Street, where I've lived the past 2 years, and I really like just hanging out with my friends all the time and being super involved in school events and everything else. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me, and I'm really excited to take on this course.
Police have determined that it was likely Xana that Dylan heard, not Kaylee, because as we know, Kaylee was found in bed with Maddie. And police probably have Xana's phone data, showing that she took several steps at this time. However, Xana's phone was found lying on the bed, and Ethan's phone was found next to her body, so it doesn't look like she was holding her phone when she encountered the killer. During the investigation, police had taken some of the roommates' belongings from the house. They were given back to them and their victims' families before Bryan Kohberger's defense could look at them. Ann Taylor, Kohberger's lawyer, requested that some of Dylan's belongings be set aside for her, so police had to go get them back from Dylan. These items included a pair of Vans, a pair of Converse, a blanket, a cloth, a handwritten note, and another pair of shoes. From the spare bedroom, police collected a black Adidas t-shirt and a green and pink jacket that Ann Taylor also wanted to look at. The defense tested these items and found the blanket and jacket tested presumptive positive for blood. That doesn't mean there was definitely blood on them, but that possible blood was found and further testing would need to confirm it. We don't know if they ever did this. As for Bethany's statement, there's not much more to add. However, she told police that Kaylee didn't want to go to Texas anymore. She wanted to stay in Idaho with her friends. Bethany also told police that Ethan and Xana used Adderall when they were drinking. She said the night of the murders she saw Ethan take a pill and Xana crush up a pill and snort it. We don't know if this was actually Adderall, nor do we know if any of the victims had drugs in their systems. After the surviving roommates, police interviewed other people who knew the victims. These included their friends, acquaintances, and people who saw them the night before they were killed. Jack Showalter, also known as Hoodie Guy, was another University of Idaho student. He described himself to police as a hothead, and said that he and his friends often got into drunken fights with other students. He allegedly got kicked out of a fraternity for bad behaviour, specifics of which are unknown. The reason we know that Kaylee and Maddie went to the grub truck after the Corner Club on the night of the murders is because police received a phone call from Jack Showalter.
This is Sergeant Hathaway.
Hey, how's it going, sir?
Hey, how we doing?
My name is... I just want to make like a statement about, the night of this Saturday.
Okay, what's going on?
I'm just friends with Maddie. I was with her at the bar that night. And I forget I don't know the person we left with, but we left to get grub truck at like 2, and we were there from like 2 to probably latest 2:30. And then she and the other lady got picked up in a silver sedan. That's my only description I know. And then they went home from there. And I just wanted to let you guys know as far as like I knew about her whereabouts. I don't know if that helps with anything, but...
I mean, yeah, anything helps. You said you were with them?
I was with Maddie at the Corner Club. And then they wanted to leave Maddie and our friend. I don't recall who her friend was. I was intoxicated. But then we went to grub truck, and then they got picked up from grub truck.
Okay.
And that's as far as I knew about her whereabouts that night.
Okay. Well...
Yeah, she just got in a silver sedan.
But you don't know who it was or anything?
No, I didn't see who the driver was.
And you said your name was...
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm right down the road at...
You said...
Yes, sir.
Is that where you're at now?
No, I drove home this morning.
Oh, okay.
I'm in Boise.
In Boise?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
And you said that's your parents' place? What are your folks' name? Okay, and you just drove home today?
Yeah, it just seemed like everyone else in my house and a lot of the community was leaving, and I do live right down the road, so it kind of seems unsettling being around. Yeah.
No, I get it. Do you have a roommate or anything?
No, I live by myself.
Gotcha.
On the night of November 13th, Jack was at the Corner Club where Kaylee and Maddie also were. He knew Maddie from having some classes with her, but he didn't know Kaylee, and told police that initially he didn't even know it was Kaylee who was with Maddie that night. He said he only talked with Maddie, and she invited him to come with them to get food. They planned to go to John's Alley, but ended up going to Grub Truck. He told police that he was under the impression they were all going to go to another bar after getting food, but when he saw the girls run off, he assumed they got a ride and went home, so he went home himself. When police searched his apartment where Jack lived alone, they found blood on the front door of Jack's apartment. 4 blood samples were taken, including near the light switch in the bathroom and the shower curtain. We don't know if this blood was tested, so we don't know whose it was, but Jack likes to hunt, so it could have easily been animal blood. They also tested a pair of his Vans, but the result was negative for blood. An unknown person was interviewed by police and was asked about Jack Showalter. They described him as an aggressive person who got into a lot of fights. They thought he was not the type of person that either Kaylee or Maddie would typically associate with, so when they all left the Corner Club together that night, they found it strange. Soon after the murders, Jack returned to his parents' house in Boise. He told police he left Moscow because of the murders and because there were rumors that classes would start online only. He said he felt uneasy being there because he lived so close to the King Road house. Ultimately, Jack was cleared by police. But there is a surveillance camera that shows a shadowy figure dressed in black leaving the Queen Road apartments where Jack lived, walking towards the 1122 King Road at 3:50 a.m. shortly before the attacks occurred. This could have been someone else. Jack DeCoeur, Kaylee's ex-boyfriend, was one of the first people questioned. On November 12th, he arrived at the Corner Club at about 11 p.m. and saw Kaylee and Maddie there. He said he also noticed Hoodie Guy, who we know as Jack Showalter. He said he left at 1 a.m., went home and saw his roommates for a little bit, and then went to bed at about 1:20 a.m. However, staff at the Corner Club say that they have security footage of Jack leaving the Corner Club at 1:51 a.m., which is much later than Jack said. However, he could have just easily misremembered or just not known the time that he left. He said he woke up the next morning at 11:30 and saw several missed calls from Kaylee and Maddie. He said that getting calls from Maddie was unusual. She would never call him, not for any reason. And we still don't know why exactly Kaylee and Maddie were calling him.
And then what did you do after you got off shift?
I went home. I dropped off some food at my friend who was working at the Corner Club. And then I went home and met up with my friends, and then we went to the Corner Club as a group.
What time did you guys get to the club?
Probably close to 11.
Okay. Anything kind of talking through the rest of your evening there? You guys just hang out, or?
Yeah, we hung out there, and then I actually did run into Kaylee at the Corner Club. Say hi to her, talk to her for probably a minute or so. And then eventually, I don't know if she left before or after me, but I left. I came back home, pretty much just went to bed, and then I woke up and I saw a bunch of commotion down the street, and I walked out there just to see what was going on, and I kind of heard some things. But I later looked on my phone and found like 6 missed calls from Kaylee, 3 from Maddie as well.
Sorry to interrupt you, man. You said you guys, what time did you leave the Corner Club?
Probably about 1. That's, I don't really know that I wasn't paying attention at time.
No, that's right. You went straight home after that. You guys stop and get grub truck or anything like that?
No, straight home.
Okay. So how did you end up getting home?
Just another buddy came to pick us up.
Okay. Who is that? Do you mind me asking? And you just went straight home, you said, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then about what time did you go to sleep? Do you remember?
Probably about a half hour after that, after I got home at 1-ish.
So 1:30-ish, fair to say?
That's my best guess.
Okay. And then what time did you actually wake up?
Like 11:30.
11:30. And then did you have roommates at all? Mm-hmm. Were they there?
Yeah.
Okay.
And 2 of them were home when I walked out of my room, but I don't know who else was there.
Okay. So you said you woke up 11:30 and saw a commotion. What, can you kind of describe that to me?
My roommate's window in his bedroom can just see like down the street, and he just like mentioned it, and I got up and looked. And I saw it was up by Kaylee's house, and so I walked out there.
Was it like people or cop cars or?
Yeah, I mean there's like 3 cop cars and then some EMTs and stuff.
Okay. And you said that was about 11:30?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember what time, you said you went back and checked your phone. Do you kind of remember, like, you said had missed calls from Kaylee. Do you remember what time those came in by chance?
Yeah, they were like between 2:40 and 3. The last one was like 2:57. One of them was also a FaceTime.
How many of them were there, do you think?
I think there was 6 from Kaylee and 3 from Maddie. Maddie, I've known her forever, but she wouldn't just call me unless they needed something. So that was weird to me.
Okay. You said the last one was like 0247, you said something like that?
257.
No text messages from either one?
Actually, I don't know how she got my vape, but she texted me at like 2:45 and she said,
Hey, I have your vape. You can come get it from the house. Okay. I didn't say that till the morning.
Jack and Kaylee were together for 5 years, but they broke up about 3 months before the murders because Kaylee planned to move to Austin. Together, they looked after their 1-year-old golden doodle, Murphy. Kaylee's family have speculated that the reason she tried to call Jack that night was because she was having doubts about the breakup and was considering getting back together with him. But one friend who lived directly below the 1122 King Road house, when interviewed by police, said that Kaylee broke up with Jack several times over the course of their relationship, and was never mad or upset about it. They thought she did so because she was bored of the relationship. In fact, according to this friend, Kaylee at one point liked another boy who was also a fellow student. And according to Bethany, she was possibly seeing someone new at the time of the murders. The new guy had not been to the King Road house, but she thought that Kaylee might have stayed with him once or twice. It doesn't seem likely that Kaylee was calling him to get back with him. Steve Gonsalves, Kaylee's father, also said that late-night drunk calling was typical for Kaylee and Maddie. But Jack and Kaylee had remained friends after their breakup, and Jack told police that sometimes Kaylee would call him when she was walking home alone, or when she was feeling sketched out. It's unlikely that being sketched out was the reason for these calls because at 2:53, Maddie called Bethany, and when she didn't answer, she went down to her room and asked her if Murphy was with her. So if something was sketching them out, Maddie probably would have said something to Bethany. However, there is one thing that's strange and confusing about the late-night phone calls to Jack. Supposedly, there was a 17-minute phone call from Kaylee to Jack at 2:26 a.m., but Jack does not recall it. When Officer Van Leuven interviewed Jack, he brought up the texts and calls between him and Kaylee. He uses the phrase "the night before" to describe the hours before she died. This is obvious from the context if you read the whole statement. He explained that the last text Kaylee sent to Jack at 2:15 a.m. was her saying that she had his vape. The same night at 2:26 a.m., the officer said there appeared to be a 17-minute phone call, which Jack does not remember. Jack said he was drunk that night. On a scale of 1 to 10, he said he was an 8, so it's possible he forgot. From the statement, it seems that the 17-minute phone call happened the same night of the 9 unanswered calls, not a previous night, because Officer Van Leuven never shifts his timeline. He specifically refers to Kaylee's last text to Jack at 2:15 a.m. about his vape, and the evidence log confirms a vape pen was found under her body. The call is mentioned directly after this in the interview, which ties it to the same sequence of events that night. But the 17-minute phone call at 2:26 a.m. would overlap some of the unanswered calls that both Kaylee and Maddie made to Jack. Both can't happen at the same time. Unfortunately, we only have Officer Van Leuven's statement about this interview, not an actual transcript, so we can't clear this confusion up. Did Kaylee speak to Jack that night, or was it on the Friday night that they spoke? On November 18th, police searched Jack's home. They found possible blood on the wall in the entryway and 5 or 6 drops of blood on a kitchen wall, but we don't know if this blood was tested, so we don't know whose it was. Ultimately, Jack was also cleared, and Kaylee's family have always supported him and said he had nothing to do with her death. On November 12th, Kaylee, Maddie, and another female friend who did not live at 112 King Road went to the Corner Club. Kaylee contacted an Uber driver named Eric and asked if he could pick them up to take them there. Eric drove for Uber and Lyft, and he knew Kaylee because he'd picked her up several times in the past year. He said that she didn't book the ride through the app, but texted him directly. He had given her and other sorority members his phone number so that they could contact him. Eric picked the 3 girls up, and the unknown female friend told police that during the ride, Kaylee asked him how fatherhood was, and he allegedly said that it was harder than he thought, but his wife took the baby out of town, and he was happy to have the house to himself that weekend. That friend told police that at first she didn't think his behavior was creepy or anything, but later thought that it was odd. According to her, he kept tiny alcohol bottles in his car and gave them out to girls he gave rides to. She said he seemed to drop things in his personal life to accommodate giving girls lifts. But Dylan and Bethany said that Eric was nice and everybody trusted him. Ultimately, police cleared him. On 17th of November, police interviewed a neighbor who had come forward to say that on the morning of Sunday, November 13th, he took his dog for a walk between 9 and 10 a.m. He walked past the 1122 King Road house and saw that the front door was wide open. He said he knew it was a party house and simply assumed someone was too drunk to realise that they hadn't shut the door. He continued on his walk for about an hour, and when he walked back to his apartment at 11 a.m, the door was still wide open. He said he didn't know anybody who lived in the house personally. If it's true that the front door was wide open, then who opened it? Both Bethany and Dylan have maintained that they were in Bethany's room all morning and were too scared to even go to the bathroom. If the door was wide open already from the night before, there's no way Dylan would have missed that. It was a cold night for a start, and she would have felt the cold air when she ran down to Bethany's room. This wasn't the first time that the front door of the house had been found wide open either. In fact, there were a few strange goings-on in the neighbourhood shortly before the murders. One neighbour who lives on Queen Road said that on October 14th at around 1 a.m, she heard what she thought was a man walking up to her front door and trying to open it. Another weird occurrence involved Murphy at a party. Kaylee threw Emily, Hunter Johnson's girlfriend, a birthday party at the 1122 King Road house. Several people, including Kaylee and Emily and Murphy the dog, were on the back patio when Murphy ran up into the bushes and trees behind the house, and he wouldn't come back when called. Kaylee was concerned because it was unlike Murphy to not come back. This happened again on October 29th when the roommates were having a Halloween party, except this time it was during the day. When people were outside on the back patio, Murphy ran off into the bushes and wouldn't come back when called. Emily said they heard noises similar to that of someone walking in the woods, but they didn't see anyone. However, it was enough to spook them to go inside and shut the door. The last occasion of this same type of behaviour from Murphy took place about 2 weeks before the murders. And another creepy incident happened to Kaylee herself. Bethany told police that Kaylee had spoken about an incident where she was followed. Apparently, Kaylee was at Winco, and a man followed her around the store, watched her check out, and then followed her to her car, where Xana was sitting. Kaylee had described the man as African American and in his 20s, but police found this man and interviewed him. He said he just wanted to get her phone number, and he was shy, so that's why he followed her outside. Police took his DNA, and that was that. According to Bethany, Kaylee was into crime shows, and one day, unprompted, Kaylee looked up sex offenders in the area and found one who lived in the blue apartments on Queen Road. Bethany stated that on November 4th at around 11 a.m, she and her other roommates came home to find the front door wide open. They grabbed golf clubs out of the first floor spare room to protect themselves as they went into the house. But it was a windy day, and the screws were loose on the hinges. Xana's dad apparently fixed it that weekend for them. So when the neighbour saw the door wide open, was it just the wind? Were the hinges still broken? On another occasion, while Bethany was at a chapter meeting, Kaylee called to ask when they would be home soon, because a man had been watching her as she took Murphy to use the bathroom. And finally, Bethany told police about a time when Kaylee said that there was a shadowy figure lurking in the trees behind the house. On December 5th, a tip came in about a fraternity member at the University of Idaho. The tip involved photographs at a Halloween party with the student dressed in military gear holding a large K-bar knife. The person who called in the tip heard that the murder weapon was a K-bar, so that's why he called it in. The police met with the student in the photographs who was holding the knife, and he said that he still had it. He also told the officers that he had been inside 1122 King Road 2 months previously with a female friend who was a member of a sorority. While there, he briefly met Kaylee. He also said that he had met Ethan one time at a formal event, and afterwards they went out with other students to the Hunga Dunga brewery. The student gave a DNA sample to the police, but we can only assume nothing came of it. There was some physical evidence left at the crime scene, which police tested. A latent footprint was discovered just outside Dylan's bedroom. It wasn't visible to the naked eye, but became clear when investigators tested it with amido black, a protein stain that reacts with blood. The chemical turns any proteins present into a dark blue-black colour, making otherwise faint prints stand out. Unlike luminol, which is used to detect blood that's been cleaned up, amido black doesn't glow in the dark. Instead, it simply visually enhances existing bloody footprints or fingerprints so that they can be properly documented. But there were no other bloody footprints found before or after it, and it was much closer to Dylan's door than she reported the masked man to be when she saw him walking towards the kitchen. In fact, the footprint looked to be coming in or out of her room. So whose footprint was this, and when did it get there? And why was it covered in blood? Police described it as having a diamond-shaped pattern, similar to a pair of Vans. As discussed, Dylan had a pair of Vans, which were taken into evidence. Unfortunately, these belongings were given back to Dylan, and then when police went to collect them again, it meant the chain of custody was broken, so any evidence found on the shoes wouldn't be reliable anyway. Police also collected other latent shoe prints from the exterior of the house near the sliding door, and near the south-facing window, and one west of the house near a fence. They also collected several blood swabs throughout the house, including one from Kaylee's bedroom, even though no victim was found in there. They also found blood from an unknown male on the banister that led from the second floor to the first floor. This is unknown male B. They also found blood from a different male inside a pair of gloves found outside the house. This is unknown male D. There was also a blood smear on the knife sheath, and when tested they found a mixture of partial DNA profiles from at least 2 people. This has been explained as a mixture of the victim's DNA and possible transfer DNA from people they interacted with prior to their deaths, or even from contamination. Since these profiles were partial, they were not enough to find a match. As we know, there was a full DNA profile found under the clasp on the knife sheath. Many individuals who knew the victims had their DNA compared to unknown male B and unknown male D as well, but there was no match to any of these, and police didn't investigate these DNA profiles any further. Instead, they only focused on the full DNA profile found on the clasp of the knife sheath. Detective Brett Payne of the Moscow Police Department arrived at 1122 King Road at or before 4 p.m. on the 13th, but his body cam was off, so we can only take his word. In his statement, he said he saw the knife sheath on the bed next to Maddie's left side, partially covered by the comforter. It was a tan-coloured sheath with USMC on it, and it belonged to a K-bar knife. The sheath contained touch DNA under the clasp. Unfortunately, no photos or video of the knife sheath have been released to the public. Detective Payne testified at a court hearing that he first learned of Bryan Kohberger's name after the FBI gave him the name on December 20th. He said that the reason they did not try to identify unknown male B and unknown male D was because they already had Bryan Kohberger's name at that point. But he also said in the hearing that he was aware of the 2 unknown male DNA profiles before they had Kohberger's name, so it's strange that the police would not try to identify them. There was also more DNA found, under Maddie's fingernails. Investigators found a 3-person mixture of DNA under her fingernails, but again, we don't know who this belongs to. However, Maddie had no defensive wounds, so that's why police think this DNA is irrelevant. They think she was asleep when she was attacked, so it's unlikely that this DNA was from defending herself. Here is a map of 2 cameras on Linda Lane and their proximity to the King Road house. This camera picked up several unsettling noises that night. At 2:21 a.m., a female screams, "Oh my God," then a few seconds later shouts something else, but it's not clear what she says. There's also a male voice shouting, and briefly a dog barking. These screams and shouts don't sound like people having fun. They sound like they're distressed. If these sounds were not coming from the house, it would be interesting to know if police identified these people and found out what they were screaming and shouting about. At 3 a.m., a police officer in an unmarked car stops 4 men and gives 3 of them citations for underage drinking. In the background, we can see 4 or 5 people running near the King Road house down the steps.
They were standing in this spot. The young men, and the body camera video was pointed this way, and it is over my shoulder where you could see very faintly what looked like several people walking fast or almost running by in the background. And I want to walk you over, Ashley, and give you a little more perspective. It was somewhere in this area right here. And we can tell because we analyzed these lights of this little apartment building. It was somewhere right in this area. There's another big apartment building here. Mo is going to point in that direction. Our producer is up there. She's going to flash a flashlight, Ashley. You see that flashlight flashing right there? That is right in front of the house where the murders happened. So it's all very, very close.
Another camera, which was less than 50 feet from the house, was from the balcony of 1112 King Road. From the kitchen, you can clearly see the balcony of Kaylee's room, and that's how close it was to the house. The camera is attached to this light, so it faces west. The King Road house is directly behind it. Some of these noises are quite disturbing. At 3:32 a.m., it sounds like someone screams, but it's very faint. At 3:41 a.m., it sounds like someone says, "Help me." At 3:47 a.m., it seems like a man is crying. And then at 4:02 a.m., a man is shouting and crying. But these noises are strange. These all happened before the police say the murders took place. So what exactly was going on? Why were these people in distress? The cameras also picked up several vehicles coming and going that night. At 3:30 a.m, suspect vehicle 1 is seen entering the frame. Remember, the King Road house is about 50 feet directly behind this camera. The vehicle continues past the house and loops around the Linda Lane apartments and then heads back the way it came. The vehicle does the same route again at 3:38 and again at 3:56. At 4:04 a.m, the vehicle enters the frame yet again, but this time it makes a U-turn at the Linda Lane apartments. Then, as it arrived at the King Road house, it appears to either park or turn around again unsuccessfully. The vehicle continues forward to the intersection and does a 3-point turn, and comes back one more time past the King Road house. At 4:07 a.m, it loops around the Linda Lane apartments and then allegedly parks at the back parking lot behind the King Road house. This is the same parking lot the DoorDash driver stopped just minutes before. A vehicle is then seen speeding by at 4:20 a.m. The FBI identified the make and model of this vehicle and on November 25th put out a bolo to be on the lookout for a 2011 to 2013 white Hyundai Elantra. It's important to note, and this was confirmed in recent court hearings, that the FBI were unable to identify suspect number 1 vehicle shown in the 112 King Road and the Linda Lane apartments camera footage. This is because they did not have a clear enough view of the vehicle. They were only able to identify a vehicle caught on camera at 1125 Ridge Road at 4:01 a.m. They also noted that this vehicle did not have a front license plate. They argued that it takes approximately 3 minutes to drive from 1125 Ridge Road to the King Road-Queen Road intersection. Therefore, they believed the car at Ridge Road is the same one seen entering the intersection at 4:04 a.m. Also, just 4 minutes after we see this car speed past the King Road house, there is another car that passes by. A neighbour said that it's possibly her car. She worked overnight shifts from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. She told police that it's possible she went home to feed her cat, and then you see her car going back to work at 4:24 a.m. But it is an odd time to feed your cat. Why not just wait the extra 2 hours when your shift is over? And also, we don't see her car arriving and then leaving. We only see it leaving. So was this really the neighbour's car, or was it someone else? Was it someone following suspect vehicle number 1 that went by at 4:20? Either way, police were looking for suspect vehicle number 1, which they believed to be a white Elantra. And they found a white Elantra driving around Pullman on the morning of the 13th and past a gas station just a few blocks from the King Road house. On November 29th, a Washington State University police officer queried white Elantras registered at the university and found a 2015 white Elantra with a Pennsylvania license plate registered to one Bryan Kohberger. In Pennsylvania, front plates are not required. The same night, another officer found a 2015 white Elantra in the parking lot of a WSU apartment complex in Pullman, but it had front and back Washington plates. He ran the tags, and sure enough, it came back as belonging to Bryan Kohberger. Bryan Christopher Kohberger was born on November 21st, 1994, in Pennsylvania. He grew up in the Poconos, where classmates described him as quiet, awkward, and often bullied. In high school, he was overweight and struggled socially. Sometime later, he lost more than 100 pounds. Those who knew him said the transformation changed his demeanour. He appeared more confident, but also more arrogant. Around this period, Kohberger began using drugs. It started with marijuana, but then escalated to heroin. Friends recalled visible changes in his appearance and behaviour. He grew thin, withdrawn, and erratic. He was reported to have been in and out of rehab, and at times spoke of wanting to get clean. By his early 20s, Kohberger shifted his focus to academics. He earned an associate's degree in psychology at Northampton Community College, followed by a bachelor's and master's degree in criminal justice at DeSales University. Professors noted his intelligence and focus, but peers described him as overbearing in discussions, often attempting to dominate conversations and prove his knowledge. In 2022, he began a PhD program in criminology at Washington State University. He lived in Pullman, Washington, about 15 minutes from Moscow. Those around him noticed unusual habits. He followed a strict vegan diet and reportedly refused to eat from pans that had been used to cook meat. Classmates and co-workers described him as an intense and socially awkward guy. Some said he could become domineering, both in conversation and physically, sometimes putting people in headlocks as a form of control. Bryan also worked as a teaching assistant in the Department of Criminal Justice and Criminology. His role included grading assignments and assisting professors with undergraduate classes. Students described him as a harsh grader, who often left little constructive feedback. Several reported that he seemed to grade inconsistently, at times deducting significant points without clear reasoning. By the fall of 2022, complaints about his conduct grew. Female students in particular said that they felt he was more critical and confrontational towards women than men. His behaviour in class was also noted. On multiple occasions, he was said to have gotten into verbal altercations with professors, and at times became combative with students during discussions. In September 2022, the department issued him a formal warning over his behaviour. Faculty documented his rude and confrontational manner with both students and staff. Meetings were arranged to address the concerns and set expectations for improvement. And one of Bryan's teachers told a colleague, "Mark my word, I work with predators. If we give him a PhD, that's the guy that in many years when he is a professor, we will hear is harassing, stalking, and sexually abusing his students." One professor said Kohberger tried to keep him from leaving his office, an act he described as power tripping. In an office used by female students, one of his professors said Kohberger would position himself in the doorway, physically blocking it until she stepped in, allowing the female students to leave. One faculty member said her maternal instinct kicked in. It wouldn't allow her to leave a female student alone in an office with Kohberger, so she kept herself busy until he left. In December 2022, just days before his arrest, Kohberger was informed he had failed to meet the conditions laid out in his improvement plan. The university removed him from his teaching assistant position, effective at the end of the semester. Accounts of Kohberger's interactions with women were also worrisome. One woman said that she matched with him on Tinder several years before the murders. They went to see a movie, after which he followed her back to her dorm. She said he touched her without consent, made her uncomfortable, and later sent her a message commenting on her birthing hips. Another woman reported matching with Kohberger on Tinder just 1 or 2 months before the murders. Their conversation turned to horror films and ways to die. When she said she thought being stabbed would be the worst way to go, Kohberger allegedly replied, "like with a K-bar." She found the exchange disturbing and stopped speaking with him. In August 2022, a University of Idaho student said that she met Kohberger in an apartment lobby and pointed him towards a pool party. She said she became uncomfortable with his staring and awkward conversation. During the party, Kohberger made very direct eye contact with her and made a beeline towards her, and a friend had to get up and intercept him after realizing that the student was uncomfortable. When police reviewed Kohberger's information, they found that he matched the physical description given by Dylan. They also found that on November 18th, he had registered the car in Washington as his Pennsylvania plates were about to expire. They also found that he had been stopped by traffic cops several times while driving his Elantra. A search warrant for Bryan Kohberger's phone records and cellular data was also granted. In the early morning hours of November 13th, Thompson said Bryan Kohberger left his home in Pullman to drive the 10 miles to Moscow and turned off his cell phone from 10:54 to 4:48 a.m. They said that this was consistent with him trying to conceal his location during the murders. Once his phone was back on, he pinged several areas south of Moscow before arriving back in Pullman around 5:30 a.m. Latah County prosecutor Bill Thompson said that Kohberger's phone began pinging a cell tower near the 1122 King Road house as early as July. It pinged the same area 23 times between July 9th and November 13th, between the hours of 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. Police thought that this was proof that Bryan was scoping out the King Road house on many occasions. Perhaps he was assessing the routines of the roommates, who came and went and when, and maybe he was planning his entry and exit. Back to the morning of the 13th, at 6:17 a.m., Bryan made a call to his father, which lasted 36 minutes. This was the first of 3 phone calls to his dad that morning, with the longest lasting 54 minutes. But it's unknown what they spoke about. At 9:12 a.m., Bryan's phone pinged a cell tower close to the King Road house, fueling speculation that he went back to the crime scene. At 10:31 a.m., Bryan was back at his apartment and snapped this selfie. What was he so happy about after staying up all night? At 12:34 p.m., Bryan goes to Costco, but is seemingly turned away. Didn't he know that you need a membership card to get in? Then at 12:58 p.m., he leaves Albertsons after only buying a pre-made Starbucks Frappuccino. Why is he all the way in Clarkston just to buy a drink? It doesn't make sense unless he was in the area for another reason, say disposing of the murder weapon. A woman came forward and told police that on the 13th, she and her husband had gone to Costco in Clarkston. When they left, sometime between 2 and 3 p.m., they drove north on Red Wolf Bridge and saw a man wearing business casual clothes walking on a grassy area between the highway and the Snake River. Perhaps Kohberger's trips to Costco and Albertson were a way of establishing an innocent reason for being in the area. In December, Bryan's father had traveled to Pullman, Washington to see Bryan, and together they made the long road trip back to his parents' home in Pennsylvania. Along the way, they were stopped by traffic cops twice. First for speeding, and then 9 minutes later by a different officer for following the car in front too closely.
Good. Take a look at your driver's license real quick if I could. See, he's right up on that van, man. He was right up on the back end of that van. Pulled you over for tailgating. Is this your car? Okay.
Perhaps police were told to keep tabs on him. Dateline reported some of Bryan's interesting internet searches on the lead up to his arrest. On December 28th, he watched a YouTube video called Ted Bundy, Essence of a Psychopath, and then took several creepy selfies, one of which was this menacing one in a black hoodie. According to Dateline, Bryan also searched his own name and looked up the King Road murders. But the weirdness doesn't end there. Dateline reported that Bryan had a trove of images of female students from both University of Idaho and Washington State taken from their social media profiles. On December 27th, police were staking out Bryan's parents' house. They collected trash and tested it. They discovered that the DNA on the trash belonged to the father of the person who left their DNA on the knife sheath clasp. In other words, the trash contained Bryan's father's DNA, and they were able to match that with the DNA from the knife sheath. In the early hours of December 30th, police arrested Bryan Kohberger. On January 4th, he was extradited back to Idaho. He was charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary, for which he pleaded not guilty. Bryan's motive for the murders has been difficult to understand. Apparently, investigators found no connection whatsoever between him and the victims. So what made him target these students in particular? Or was it the house itself that he targeted? What was his thought process in planning this crime? We might never know. Let's recap the evidence against Bryan Kohberger. He drove a white Elantra, and police say it's a white Elantra speeding past the crime scene at 4:20 a.m. His phone was turned off during the time of the murders, which police say was him trying to conceal his location. His phone apparently pinged near the King Road house just hours after the crime, and 23 times before the crime. Earlier in 2022, he bought a K-bar knife from Amazon, and we know the murder weapon was a K-bar knife. After the murders, police discovered that the same Amazon account was used to view K-bar knives, and there was an attempt to delete account activity, suggesting that Bryan may have tried to hide the fact that he bought a K-bar knife. And the big one, of course, his DNA was found under the knife sheath clasp. There is definitely damning evidence here, but there are people who are skeptical of Kohberger's involvement in the crime because of some of the information we've discussed in this video. There is a lot more that we haven't covered. There's a theory that the cartel were involved, but I'm not going to go into that. The most damning evidence against Bryan is the DNA, but as of today, no picture of the knife sheath has been released, and details around its discovery at the crime scene are a bit shady. It's unclear who exactly found it. The unknown blood DNA mixture found on the back of the sheath and the unknown blood DNA discovered on the handrail by the stairs in the house and inside a pair of gloves found outside were never matched with anyone. And this raises the question, whose was it? And why didn't police put them into CODIS and try to find a match? Further, there was no physical evidence either inside Bryan's car or inside his apartment that linked him to the crime. On December 28, 2023, a little more than a year after the murders, the 1122 King Road house was demolished after the owner donated it to the university. However, the Gonsalves family was against this, saying that the house was a vital piece of evidence. But the university thought it was necessary for the community to start healing. Bryan Kohberger's trial was pushed back from June 2025 to August 2025, but in a twist that shocked a lot of people, Bryan changed his plea to guilty for all charges. It's possible he did this in order to avoid the death penalty, which he likely would have got had he been found guilty at trial. He received 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole.